We're back in the CEC office. It's the beginning of 2018, and a real revolution has come to the Polish political scene. With Marek Matraszek, CEC's chairman, to discuss the government reshuffle that has been anticipated for months on end, and following the appointment of Prime Minister Morawiecki last month, this reshuffle has finally happened. Marek, welcome.
Happy New Year. Happy
New Year to you too. What is the general trend of this reshuffle?
Well, I think the first point to make, although people use the term reshuffle, the more precise thing that's happened is actually the new government. Remember when Mr. Morawiecki took over as Prime Minister, it was technically a new government, but only he was actually changed in terms of the Prime Ministership. And he gave himself a month to actually make his ministerial appointment. So this is his cabinet, it's a new government, it's a new opening. And I think that's a very important fact to remember. It is really a decision that was taken by Jarosław Kaczyński, the law and justice leader, to position the party and the government in a way that it could successfully tackle the two major challenges it faces over the next 2 years. One is internal, the other is external. The internal challenge is obviously winning the next election. They're very well aware that it's going to be a bit of an electoral marathon over the next 2 years. There are elections, not just parliamentary elections at the end of 19, but also European elections earlier in that year, and of course at the end of this year, local elections. So it's very important for them, particularly given the potential challenge that they may face in 2 years' time from Donald Tusk, coming back from his post in Brussels to re-engage in Polish politics, to have a team that could successfully meet those electoral challenges, but above all do what I think was the key to the success of the election of President Duda 2 years ago, was to rebuild that constituency in the centre ground of Polish politics. In other words, open up to the electorate that would like to see Poland moving forward, modernising a much more centrist electorate, and one that I think is a little bit disappointed in some of the failures of the current opposition to offer a successful alternative to the government. So there was an internal challenge that this is designed to tackle. But also externally, the other challenge, of course, is with Europe and with Brussels and with the Article 7 proceedings that have been initiated and the broader issues of Poland's relationship with Brussels, which is important because in 2 or 3 years' time, Brussels is going to be deciding about the future budgetary perspective, the level of financing that Poland will receive in terms of transfer payments and other payments to Poland. So it was very important to repair that relationship with Brussels, and this is the other mission that Mr. Morawiecki has. And he will be doing so in contrast to the previous government, with the full support and cooperation of President Duda. Because remember that this new government represents not only a success for Prime Minister Morawiecki, but also for President Duda, who is looking for this new government to engage with him more actively, particularly in areas of foreign policy and defence and security issues. And the two nominations for the Ministers of Defence and of Foreign Affairs will allow the President also to have a voice. So it's very much the theme of this government is a united front, bringing together many of the players who have been a little bit isolated over the recent years and months, but above all, defining a policy which hopefully will appeal to the electorate that needs to be persuaded to re-elect Law and Justice in 2 years' time.
And internally, how has the situation changed within PiS itself? You have said that Morawiecki and Duda have been strengthened, but is everybody in PiS happy about the changes?
Well, some are happier than others. The other figure, the other personality who obviously has emerged as strengthened is Deputy Prime Minister Gowin, the Minister of Science, who through this reshuffle has brought into government a number of his allies, particularly Mrs. Emilewicz, who will take up the new position of Minister of Enterprise and Technology. His supporter is also now the Minister of Health, and there are one or two other nominations. So it's a strengthening of again, a much more moderate faction of Law and Justice. The one loser, perhaps, is the group of politicians connected to the former Defence Minister Antoni Macierewicz, who some characterize as being on the more Catholic nationalist wing of Law and Justice. And it is true that in the short term, Jarosław Kaczynski has sacrificed that group, believing that he will gain more by strengthening the relationship with the president, improving Poland's relationships with Brussels and the external community, and that ultimately that faction, although very noisy, does not really represent any traction within the electorate as a whole, and it's that part of the support for law and justice that has nowhere to go. There's no party on the right that can actually receive them. So it's a gamble, and I think that's the one interesting dynamic that will play out in the party over the months to come. But much more broadly, it's a reassertion of Jarosław Kaczynski's authority, and it's very clearly the development of a new political axis within Law and Justice built around Mateusz Morawiecki in close collaboration with Jarosław Gowin and outside President Duda. So it's very much a new relationship.
And finally, how is the dynamic looking on the opposition? Will this reconstruction prompt an actual united front of the opposition, or will they not be able to respond?
This is very bad news for the opposition. Paradoxically, what has happened is that Jarosław Kaczynski has actually removed those main targets of the opposition that the opposition had been claiming were inimical to Polish interests. They were very critical of Mr. Macierewicz, they were very critical of one or two other ministers, Minister of Environment, for example, Minister of Health. They've been removed from the government. So it leaves the opposition in a quandary as to what exactly they should be attacking Mr. Morawiecki about. Is he doing the right thing, or is he doing the wrong thing? And it also comes at a time where the opposition itself, some of the other opposition parties are in internal conflict. We've seen that in the Modern Poland Party, where there's been a leadership struggle. And really there's very little for the opposition to argue against. And this is exactly part of Kaczynski's tactic, is to establish Mr. Morawiecki in a position where he can reclaim some of that ground of the centrist electorate that had been drifting to the opposition, but as I said, really have no reason not to be supporting Mr. Morawiecki. So overall, I think for the opposition, it's not good news. It makes it very difficult for them to attack the government. Whatever arguments they can marshal are very technical, very specialized. Nobody's really interested in the intricacies of Article 7 rule of law issues in the provinces of Poland. It's very difficult to get any traction over that. So I think ultimately the ball is very much in Jarosław Kaczynski's court, and he's re-established himself as not just the architect of the current or the new Polish government, but pretty much as the master of what is going on in the Polish political scene in general.
And we have a very stable political scene to look forward to in the coming term.
Well, what is ultimately also very helpful to the government, the economic results. Say what you will about the long-term impact of Mr. Morawiecki's policies, but in the short term, and certainly leading up to the end of next year, Polish economy is growing, unemployment is going down, exports are up, there is money in people's pockets. And that's a very good position for any government to be going into the last 2 years of its term of office.
Thank you very much, Marek. We'll keep analyzing the new ministers and the new appointments at CEC, so please follow us on Twitter at CECGR and visit our website for the latest briefs.
Thank you.
Thank you.